City Council meeting for Thursday, December 21st to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Councilman Baji. Here. Councilman Walker. Here. Mayor Wheaton.
Here.
Vice Mayor Eldridge.
Here.
Councilman Gilbert. Here. 5 present.
Thank you. At this time, I would like to ask those that wish to do so to stand for the invocation given tonight by Pastor Brett Scudder, to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Right there.
Thank you for this honor. Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you tonight for Jesus, especially in this Christmas season. We thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving him as a gift to us. We thank you for the gift of governance and giving us the opportunity to govern ourselves under the moral law of God. Thank you for these council members and their families and their willingness to serve this city. Tonight we ask you, Lord, for your wisdom and your guidance. You said, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God. Lord, we perpetually need your wisdom, and we ask you to bestow that upon us tonight as we make decisions concerning this city. Father, we ask you to bless this meeting. Be with us. Father, may our minds be guided in right directions and right decisions. Father, we ask you to bless this city under the mighty hand of God, that we may prosper and continue to prosper as we have. Father, bless all of our civil servants, those who serve us in the police and the fire sectors. Lord, all of those who stand in the duties of this great city. Father, we ask you to bless them. Help us tonight. Help us to, again, make wise decisions concerning your will and your desires for our great land. Be with us tonight. Father, we commend this meeting into your hands. Help us tonight, Father, and be with us. We do honor, we exalt you, we bless you tonight. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Item 3, consider approval of agenda as presented. Are there any changes?
Yes, Mayor, there's one change. We need to change the caption and the way it reads for item 7C, which is Resolution 23-1221. We want to change it so that it reads, making appropriations from the opioid settlement funds to the Cookeville Regional Medical Center for the prevention and treatment of opioid addiction, benefiting the city of Cookeville, Tennessee, for the fiscal years 23 and 24.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the agenda as amended?
Motion to approve as been submitted.
Motion made by Councilman Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Gilbert.
Wait a minute. I had one more change.
Oh, Strike
Larry, did you need that item removed?
Yes, sir.
And that's item 7E.
Yes, sir.
If I need to make one further amendment, let's remove item 7E.
so we need to amend the agenda for the resolution and striking 7E. Is there a motion on the amended agenda?
Sorry about that.
Motion made by Councilman Bachi. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Gilbert. Any discussion from the public on the agenda? From the council? Okay, we'll vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 4A, consider appointment to the Cookeville Planning Commission. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. As everyone's aware, long-serving member of the Planning Commission, Mr. Jim Staffney, had submitted his resignation from the Planning Commission effective December 2023. The current term of Mr. Staffney expires January 1st, 2024. This resignation leaves a vacancy that needs to be filled to serve a full 5-year term on the Planning Commission. The Planning Division asked the City Council to approve a nominee to fill this vacancy. I think from our work session Monday, the council wanted to move forward with Mr. Jason Fowler.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Walker. Any discussion from the council? Okay, go ahead and vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 4B, consider reappointments to the Board of Zoning Appeals. Mr. Ward.
Again, Mayor and council members, the term of Mr. Elwood Irwin and Ms. Nancy Bohannon as members of the Board of Zoning Appeal expires January 2024. Members of the BZA serve 3-year terms and are appointed by the council. Both Mr. Irwin and Ms. Bohannon have indicated they would like to continue to serve if reappointed, and the Planning Division recommends both be reappointed.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Baji. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Eldridge, Vice Mayor Eldridge, excuse me. Any discussion from the public? From the council? Okay, vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. And 4C, consider appointments to the Sewer Regulations Appeals Board. Mr. Turner.
Mayor and members of the council, this is Sewer Appeals Regulation Board. It's a 5-member board. One, Kim Williams' term expires. She's able to serve and has agreed to do so. And Phil Staton's term is up, and he's no longer able to serve. And we're recommending Joel Deason. So the 2 new appointees, there would be Kim Williams and Joel Deason. I recommend approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Baji. Any discussion from the council? Okay, we'll vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. 5A, consider approval of minutes of council meeting held on December 7th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Any discussion from the public? From council? Okay, we'll vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 5B, consider on second and final reading ordinance O-23-1122 to rezone property located at 2210 Fisk Road, tax map 040D, Group A, parcel 006.00, from RM8 multifamily residential to CI commercial industrial mixed use. Mr. Ward.
Thank you, Mayor and council. No changes to the ordinance since first reading. We've had no calls or comments, and I recommend approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Walker. Any discussion from the public on this agenda item? Discussion from council? Okay, take a vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 5C, consider on second and final reading ordinance O-23-1224, abolishing the Department of Gas and Electric, creating a new Department of Energy, which shall include the Division of Electric and Gas. Mr. Mills.
Mayor and council members, Mayor, as you stated in the introduction, this does create a new department, the Cookeville Department of Energy. With the 2 divisions, gas and electric, both utilities will continue to have separate funds and will be required to submit to the city manager separate annual budgets. The intent here is to reduce overall costs and improve efficiency, and we will, wherever possible, have joint operations using the same personnel and equipment as best we can to reduce costs and have efficiency. We also, as we announced at first reading, plan to, once the ordinance is effective, plan to move into immediately creating a single campus for the new department. But I would ask for your approval of the creation of the Cookeville Energy Department.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Eldridge and seconded by Councilman Walker. Any discussion from the public on this agenda item? Any discussion from council? Okay, we'll take a vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. For the consent agenda, 6A, consider on second and final reading correction of a typographical error on ordinance O-23-1121, amending Title 18, Chapter 1 of the Cookeville Municipal Code relative to water connection charges. And 6B, consider rescinding bid for inventory item manhole risers approved by the City Council on 8/17/23 and award bid to second bidder from the Water Quality Control Department. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Any discussion from the council? Okay, vote on the consent agenda.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7A, consider for approval amendments to the Upper Cumberland Regional Airport interlocal agreement. Mr. Rader.
Yes, I've asked Danny to make this presentation because he's the one who works with the board down at the airport and with the city council, DOT, and FAA, and he can present this.
I think
That's
as you,
okay, Mr. Mayor.
as you are all aware, we have been working on this with the airport board for a number of months. I know Mayor Wheaton serves on the board and has been very familiar with those discussions. The attorneys for the city of Sparta, the city of Cookeville, Putnam County, and White County have all worked together with the airport staff, the airport board, and the airport attorney to try and update the airport's agreement, which has been in place since 1993. There have been a couple of amendments, but the airport operation is not exactly kept up with what the original agreement was from 1993. And in connection with some different matters that have come up down there, it became clear that it was necessary to upgrade or update rather that agreement to match what the airport is doing and to match the arrangement that has been in effect since 1993. Obviously, the airport is a very important part of this community of the Upper Cumberland, and the city of Cookeville, as well as Putnam County, the city of Sparta, and White County all own the airport 25% apiece. This agreement really just updates that, clarifies that, and will enable us to, we think, go forward for the future and continue to be successful in that regard. If this council approves it, and the county commission, I think, has already approved it, if Sparta approves it and White County approves it and this council approves it, then it'll be presented through TDOT to the FAA for their blessing. We're cautiously optimistic that there won't be any further changes from them, but we're pleased that after several months, we've gotten this to a position where we're ready to move forward. I can be glad to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you, Mr. Rader. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Bachi. Any discussion from the public on this agenda item? Discussion from council. Okay, go ahead and vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7B, consider on first reading ordinance O23-1225, amending Title 8 Alcoholic Beverages, Chapter 4 Beer, Title 11 Municipal Offenses, Chapter 6 Alcohol, and Title 16 Streets and Sidewalks, etc., Chapter 7 Public Parks, Grounds, and Municipal Areas of the Cookeville Municipal Code. Mr. Mills.
Mayor and council members, this ordinance would do two primary things. First, it would prohibit special events with alcohol in Dogwood Park, except at events conceived and produced by the city. And second, it would delete city-sponsored events. In addition, the ordinance would retitle Special Event Use Permit to Dogwood Pavilion Permit. Currently, we have both a special event permit and a special event use permit. The special event use permit is what's required to reserve the pavilion at Dogwood Park, and the special event permit is what's required to have alcohol at an event. This is confusing and needs to be revised. At present, there are only two instances where alcohol can be legally consumed outdoors on municipal property. First, nonprofits with a special event permit can hold events in Dogwood Park involving the consumption of alcohol. Second, the city of Cookeville can sponsor events with alcohol at locations designated by the city of Cookeville. That includes events in Dogwood Park, city streets, and other public property. Now, I want to point out that this ordinance was prepared by me after consulting with our city attorneys and city staff. No individual or group of council members requested this ordinance, nor were they involved in its preparation. So I know there's been a lot of comments about where did this come from. So why have we prepared this ordinance? Last summer, our city attorney advised us that barricades could no longer be utilized in Dogwood Park to separate where alcohol could be consumed during events approved for alcohol consumption. He further advised us that the park must be accessible to all and that no portions of the park can be barricaded off. Without a barricade, it is difficult to control where within the park alcohol is being consumed. Now, the city does not staff these nonprofit events, nor do we provide a police presence. For city events, the city does provide staff, and we have more control over where alcohol can be consumed. The ordinance was also prepared to address city-sponsored events. City staff has long expressed concern over how to determine what events are sponsored by the city and what aren't sponsored by the city. There's currently little, or as far as I know, there's no criteria for me or any of the city staff to determine if an event should or should not be sponsored by the city. There's a lot of confusion out about that I've been made aware of about this ordinance. First, the ordinance does not impact the town center. The town center is leased to the Public Building Authority, and it's not considered as a municipal property for the purpose of regulating the sale or consumption of alcohol. Also, regarding CPAC, in 2011, the state legislature amended TCA 574102 that allows the sale and consumption of alcohol in CPAC. It also allows for that same act also allowed for the consumption of alcohol in Dogwood Park, subject to city guidelines. The ordinance does not impact public or private golf courses. Golf courses are specifically permitted in the existing regulations, and no changes are proposed. The consumption of alcohol on public streets and public property is already prohibited unless it's for a city-sponsored event at a city-designated location. To my knowledge, the only city-sponsored event allowing the consumption of alcohol on a public street has been Wine on the West Side. Wine on the West Side has not occurred since 2021. Any other events involving the consumption of alcohol on public streets has been in violation of city codes. Streets cannot be closed for restaurant events to serve wine, beer, etc. on the sidewalk now unless it's a city-sponsored event. The ordinance does not prohibit events on private property from serving or consuming alcohol. The ordinance does not impact street closures for events. However, again, if streets are being closed for events and alcohol is being consumed in the streets, then that's a violation of the municipal code. The ordinance does not prohibit any group from obtaining a Dogwood Pavilion permit, which is what we're proposing to be called now, a Dogwood Pavilion permit special instead of a special event use permit. It doesn't prevent any group from getting a permit and holding an event in the park. So that's a summation of what the ordinance does, and I'm here for any questions you may have, and I'll try to answer them. Also, Rick Woods, who is the Director of Leisure Services, Chad, who's Assistant with Director of Leisure Services, are both here to answer any questions specifically about the park. I think Dan and Danny can also available to answer any questions, because this was the core group, along with Darren, who issues the permits for this. These are the group that was involved in the development of this ordinance. But I would recommend for your approval, and again, we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Gilbert. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this agenda item from the public?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, this is your opportunity. We'll do a little housekeeping. If you will come to the podium, left or right is fine. Tell us your name if you live in the city or county. Time limit is 3 minutes, and we will answer some questions if it has some legality or some technical issues, but in terms of having back and forth dialogue, we'll save that for after the meeting. Y'all can come to us, but we do want to hear comments, so at this time, the podium's open for comments from the public.
Hey there, I'm Blair. I'm with HIP Cookeville, Blair Dudley, sorry, with HIP Cookeville. First off, I want to say we do put on festivals in the city. We have done them in both Dogwood Park and in the streets, pull the proper permits, do all the proper things. We're pretty involved with this. I do have one thing I want to say, because I know everybody else is going to address some other things. I wish there were a process in place where the public could be involved in giving our input into these things prior to it being drafted into a resolution. I believe a lot of the calamities that occur when this happens could be resolved well ahead of time. The questions could be answered ahead of time if that process were in place. So that's one thing I have to say. I think that in some ways I appreciate this coming up, because I do think there needs to be reform. I believe there should be insurance protocols in place when alcohol is served. I think that there should be security protocols in place. I think that there should be alcohol policies in place that wouldn't allow for 50-year-old women to be overserved and start puking in the Leslie Center parking lot. You know, I think that is appropriate. I think it's irresponsible to have an event where these things occur. And I see this as solving problems that we don't actually have. We're not encountering. It's like preventative medicine or something for something that we're not actually encountering, where other protocols could come into place, you know. You don't want somebody to overdrink, require that they have tickets or an armband or something that counts off what they've had, as opposed to being a nanny state and saying, well, you're not adult enough to handle yourself. Your organization can't handle yourself, so we're going to ban this privilege, which other cities, citizens of other cities, have this. In Nashville and many, many other cities across the state of Tennessee. But the citizens of Cookeville, particularly, you're looking to pull this away from us. There are other things I think should be addressed. This whole thing of, you know, no alcohol in public streets. I'd love to see legislation that said, well, if it's contiguous to a business that already serves alcohol and it's cordoned off and they pull a proper permit, that there's an allowance for that to happen, because that's harming us economically. These festivals and such, they bring tourism in. So, all right.
Thank you, Blair. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Brianna Ortner. I have been a resident of Cookeville for almost 7 years. I've also, I think it's relevant to mention that I've worked in the food and beverage industry for 16 years. I am a proponent of responsible and safe drinking. I think that no one should ever be overserved in a perfect world, and there's definitely ways to mitigate that. So I don't want to say that this is like debaucherous or lecherous or anything of that nature to come in here, but I wanted to share my experience of moving to Cookeville. I came here on a whim on a Greyhound bus. I expected to be here for 2 weeks and then to go off to the next place. But I stayed in Cookeville because of the culture that is here in Cookeville, the sort of unique and maybe quirky events and culture that this city has cultivated. For events like Wine on the West Side, Blues and Brews, Red Stock, Shakespeare in the Park, all of these things which currently permit and allow alcohol. And I'm afraid that if the city takes that away, that the culture will change and that there will, quite frankly, be revenue opportunities lost, not only for your local restaurants and breweries, but also for things like Fall Fun Fest, which the numbers are dwindling for Fall Fun Fest. The first year I attended, it was like a big legitimate festival, and last year's was quite frankly pathetic. So yeah, I wanted to just touch upon that this is a missed opportunity, that we shouldn't be going backwards towards like puritanical draconian laws, but rather that we should be pushing forward, and that's not what I've seen in Cookeville in 2023. The last time I was here was back in January, and I don't want to bring up too much about that, but a local business is no longer in business because of calamity that happened in a way that is quite frankly concerning to me, and I worry that this particular ordinance is a part of a greater trend, and that people like me might not be welcome here in Cookeville anymore. I yield my time.
Thank you.
Hey, a lot of y'all know me, some people don't. Kevin Maxwell. I'm a property owner and a business owner here in the city of Cookeville. You know, I got pretty excited about the west side in downtown Cookeville. I invested a lot of money in there, and so has a lot of private people. And, you know, and I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate y'all's time, but I appreciate Mr. Mills saying that he drafted this by himself and presented that, because I was hoping that that's not the way everybody felt. You know, we've got an opportunity here staring us in the face. And if the city doesn't appreciate the private money and the private, what we're trying to do here, and create an amazing community. And, you can't point to an incident or an event or any of that for any of these events that we hold. But what even irks me even more is, was there any study done to see, what the repercussions of the small businesses that would be hurt by this, by taking away events? Do you know that most events thrown in the city are actually fundraisers for people that need it, right? Number two, most every person at these events are small business vendors, right? They're going to these Christmas events, so now they have alcohol, and they can't even, they make 30% of their money in a couple of weekends in an event. To take that away is really missing the boat. And I'm just, I'm a little passionate about this, but I'll just sit here and look y'all in the eye and be honest. If this is the way that I feel that Cookeville's moving, I will invest somewhere else. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I'm just one person, but, I think we really missed the boat here. And, again, I think we should, rethink this. And I just, respectfully request that y'all will table this and rethink this and get a little bit more public opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Billy George, City of Cookeville. I have been and helped organize multiple events and festivals within the City of Cookeville multiple times throughout my time in Cookeville, which has been my entire life. I ask, since it was drafted with Mr. Mills, Mr. Rader, and such, when has an event or area ever been barricaded off that has prohibited patrons? A question. Also, in Mr. Mills' comment that went to the Herald Citizen, it said that those organizations requested the barricades. The barricades were actually required by the Department of Leisure Services in the city, according to whenever we were asking the use and the needs for the beer permit. They were to keep the beer in, not to keep people out. We had to make sure that all entrances, the sidewalks, were open and available so the people could come in. So this statement of barricades restricting people, keeping people from being in the park is not true at all. The people were allowed and are allowed to come into the space. Initially, years ago, Brews and Blues, you had to have a direct ticket in order to enter the event. Now it's been that the park is open to everyone. You don't have to have a ticket to come to the event. You have to buy a creative and expressive item in order to participate in the event. And that's for another ordinance that happens within the park. And because of that, you get a glass, and then you get to sample the different beers from craft breweries in the area that come and bring people. Our local establishments purchase those beers, and then they have them at their restaurants, and then that creates other economic rural area tourism. With Upper Cumberland Pride and different events that have that, it's another option for people to come and participate within a city park. With the way that it's written now, the only reserved space or space that's limited to people is the actual stage or the amphitheater platform itself. That's the restricted area that no one can come because you're renting that space. The whole rest of the green, the bowl, everything, all that is open. So I'm curious as to what has been limited or restricted based off of the barricades, which have been required through conversations with the Department of Leisure Services and such, that have been to keep the beer in, not to keep the people out. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Okay. We'll go ahead and start discussion with the council. Anyone who on the council would like to speak to this? Okay.
I'll get started. I think this ordinance began many months ago. I think it was over 6 months ago. Correct me if I'm not wrong. James, is that about the right time frame? As an effort to conceive a demarcation point in the park for these events that have alcohol. I think there was an effort by the council to enlist James to try to find a solution to some of the issues that have come up around that. And ultimately, I think that this ordinance goes well beyond any request to do that. I think this is far overreaching. This ordinance does well more than say you can or cannot have alcohol in a certain area of the park. Or say you cannot or cannot have alcohol for certain events in the park. This says you can't have it citywide. And if you kind of go back in our downtown, which is what this is going to affect, our downtown tells a story over many years. And 20-something years ago, finding a vacant space downtown was no problem. Finding a cheap building downtown was no problem. If you wanted to open a business, if you wanted the lowest rent district in Cookeville, you went to the Cookeville's downtown. 20-something years later, if you have a vacant space downtown, people are lined up around the block, and I know from personal experience, to rent your space. You have to weed through many applications because people want to be a part of Cookeville's culture and a part of Cookeville's downtown. Our recipe is a good recipe. We do not need to go changing it without a lot of thought and a lot of process and working with the business owners and the people of Cookeville to have input in that process and to understand what the best situation that suits everybody is. Things that are in that story would be that would not have happened had this been in place many years ago. We wouldn't have had the hog rally in Cookeville that brought thousands of riders from all over the country. It's still advertised on most of our media. It's a huge part of the Chamber's tourism drive is bringing in people with motorcycles and things into our area. You wouldn't have had wine on the west side. And I know that several different organizations have operated that one event over time, and that event has seen different forms over time, but you wouldn't have had that. And I know a lot of young people rely on that event, and they say, man, this is a fun event in Cookeville. I've heard people speak of that event as a Cookeville reunion. I think when you look at young people in our downtown, they look at these particular events, and maybe there's just a few of them, but they look at those things and they say, Cookeville can have fun. Cookeville can be a fun place to come. Cookeville can be a place that likes to draw in people and resembles other cities. I know for a fact Johnson City has a downtown park. They allow festivals. They allow alcohol sales. They have a metric for this. And there's many others. Franklin has metrics for this. So Cookeville isn't alone. It doesn't have to be alone in this. And I think the important thing here is that you don't take away rights from the public without having everything in place beforehand on a promise. It's taken 6 months to bring this ordinance to the people. So if there was a group that came to Cookeville and said, we want to do this, and it's going to be a great thing for your city, give us 6 months to look at some legislation and we'll talk about it. That's not going to ever happen. That's not going to be a thing that we work towards. So I'm a little disappointed in the ordinance. I think it overreaches what was requested. And I would urge my fellow council members to see that and bring this back for more further study, amend it as needed, and try to find a solution that does work for all the parties involved. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to table this ordinance.
Okay, so
Wait a minute.
Motion to amend the existing motion to table the ordinance.
Is it a motion to table the ordinance, or it's not a motion?
There's a motion on the table.
Yeah, well, yeah, right. Do you want to make a motion to table?
Yes,
Okay.
which is amendment of the current
Okay,
motion.
so second, we have to do a second.
Does that mean there'll be more public discussion about the tabling amendment? And then, so what?
Well, there has to be a second and
Yeah,
then
do we
discussion.
finish this discussion first, or do we?
No, you made a motion to amend this to table it, so there needs to be a second, and then there's discussion on that.
And then we can come back and finish the discussion on the
Yeah,
first
right,
one?
Exactly.
So I'll second the motion to keep the discussion going.
Table.
Okay.
So we have a motion to table.
So let's take a vote on that.
It's a motion to table.
Table always makes sure.
No discussion.
And that's, and it's time for, it's discussion now that there's been a motion and a
So
second.
before we vote, I may need more Robert's Rules of Order tutorial here in terms of when do we get to come back
After this motion is either, if this motion is
past?
passed,
No more
then that's
discussion.
it
Right.
for tonight. If
Okay.
this motion is defeated, then it comes back to further discussion on the main motion.
But for clarity, we cannot have another motion to table after that,
I
correct?
don't think so, no. But you can, but the council can still vote to postpone and not necessarily, quote, formally table it.
So if
You don't have to act on this if you don't want to.
So if we table this for further discussion, what is it
We're shutting down this discussion.
No, you get to discuss after the table.
You get to discuss the tabling. Right, but in effect, you're shutting down the initial discussion.
Yeah,
I mean, it's still about the ordinance, whether we want to table it or not.
Well, no, it's technically about the tabling.
it's
Well,
tabled.
whether we should want to.
Well, it's tabled. If you vote to table the motion, then it's tabled.
It's tabled, yeah. What is there? Yeah.
Well, we have to vote. There's discussion between the tabling, the motion to table, and the vote to table. So that would be the period of discussion
That's what we're
about the ordinance and whether it's the right thing or not to table it.
That's what we're doing right now.
Well, we haven't had the.
So if we table it, I mean, then what we're doing, are we tasking?
There's nothing wrong with that.
Then,
If it, basically, if you, right now, the discussion is whether to table the motion to pass the original ordinance, okay? And you're discussing that, whether to basically essentially postpone any action on this ordinance. It doesn't pass it and it doesn't defeat it, but it postpones it. And if it's postponed, then it's postponed, you go on to the next item.
Okay, as a point of order, do we have a second on the motion to table?
Yes. Yeah,
I'd give us-
Lauren seconded.
Okay.
To continue the discussion.
Is that what you were concerned about? Yeah, no, we have a second.
Okay.
Now it's the discussion on the motion to table.
Which Lauren typically protocols the audience first.
Which one?
No, we don't have to. This is for us.
That's not a new motion.
So it's open for discussion.
To the public or to us?
To us.
Public.
Continue talking.
All right. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, why not, yeah.
No, I don't think we should. My understanding was when we were in there Monday night, all five of us kind of agreed that we were okay with it coming out of the park. Even Eric, I'm sitting there saying, I'm okay with that, but not okay with this.
Yeah, and
That was my understanding, so that was my understanding.
we wanted to get it
I
out
can
for
speak,
discussion.
I can speak for myself. So,
Please do.
and I think they've got a recording of the meeting at the radio station. But I think it's very clear that this doesn't just do the park. And I made that very clear Monday night.
Which you also said it did restaurants and a bunch of other things that weren't true.
It doesn't do restaurants.
It does affect them. I mean,
No, it doesn't stop, it doesn't, your quote was that it stops them from doing something they can't.
we had a restaurant owner speak tonight that it would affect them.
No.
So, I mean, I don't see how.
James, does it affect that?
There's only 2 events.
Right. I mean, in that way, it affects.
How are we the ones that decide whether this affects restaurants or business owners unless they tell us?
You specifically said it limited things that weren't permissible now.
It does limit more things.
No, it doesn't. But you specifically said it stopped bistro tables and wine from being.
It removes all framework for that, and that was my
No,
word.
that's not what you said.
No, currently, we have framework for city-sponsored events. So if a group or a nonprofit currently wants to go to the city and say, hey, we're a city-sponsored nonprofit, and we would like to work, so maybe it's one of these groups that have had alcohol in the park for a beer festival. Well, if they can come to us as the council or actually go to James Mills directly, they can say, we want to have a city-sponsored farm-to-table event, and we want to serve wine at this event, and we want the city to sponsor this event so that we can serve wine. Our existing framework provides that. And so we are removing that framework. We are taking all of it out in several sections of our code.
What we're doing.
James, is that not correct?
Well, what we're doing is we're responding to a department heads and city managers and our attorneys that we pay appealing to us saying, hey, we have an ordinance here that is not functionally manageable. That's what the issue is. It's not our preferences for all the quality of life issues that we all probably have a tendency to like, and that everyone I've talked to understands the situation we are in with our current state of ordinance. And to your point earlier about, hey, it's premature to vote on this, that nothing happens quickly. I've discovered that in government. But we have an issue at hand that they have brought to us. It's been studied, and they're saying, hey, this is not tenable. We need to do something about this. And then amongst ourselves, we all talk about it, and I think this is healthy discourse to have with the public. Hey, let's talk about a comprehensive reform on all these things. And if nothing else, that's the catalyst for that. But what we have right now is a dysfunctional ordinance, and they're saying, hey, guys, we're having a hard time managing this. We need some help here, and that's what they've offered us.
Right.
I mean, that's a narrative, and I see a different narrative here. I see that I was notified personally, and I mean, there's complaints from the public that, hey, we don't know about this thing.
That's what a public hearing's for. That's what this is.
We didn't get a chance to give input.
They have it now.
2 minutes.
They have it right
2 minutes a person, and so from 3 minutes.
Well, that's
plenty of time. And so after it's written.
The solution to the existing problem is what we're debating.
Yeah.
Well, so as a council member, I was notified Wednesday of last week of this drafted ordinance to look at it, to discuss with the public. And when I was notified, we were only notified that this is a solution to a problem many months ago. It's possible, if you guys like it and if you guys are interested in it, to put this on the agenda in the near future. And I believe we put it on the agenda Monday night. And I argued that it shouldn't be on the agenda. And I argued that this ordinance overreaches what it does. So let's not put words that aren't true into the mouths of people that didn't say them.
I think everybody was there.
Well, I mean, there was a recording of it.
And you did say, I'm okay coming out of parks. I am not okay with coming out of streets.
I'm not okay with this ordinance. And as far as the parks go, it needs further discussion. And I'm not, if alcohol needs to be prohibited in the park because there's no other way to manage it, that I am more than willing to have that conversation and look at an ordinance that does that. We are not doing that tonight. We are passing a full-blown prohibition ban on alcohol for any of the events in the park, in the city streets, in public property as a whole. It's not just the park. And to make that narrative isn't being truthful to the people.
You were getting ready to say something, Dan?
Oh, I was just going to say, the way the ordinance is now, the city of Cookeville can sponsor any event anywhere in the city and have alcohol involved anywhere in the city. Before, that's the way that this ordinance is, and that's the way it was before. But this, before also, any 501c3 or bona fide charitable organization could ask for a special event permit to have alcohol-related events in Dogwood Park. And there were no criteria over who to say yes to and who to say no.
So any nonprofit,
Any
those that
nonprofit or charitable.
those that some of us may not want here in,
But there was, so.
we can't turn certain things away, right?
This doesn't.
What you're saying.
This doesn't.
I'm talking about yours.
This doesn't do away with alcohol in the city because there's still alcohol allowed in the CPAC.
Yeah, we just heard
Anywhere
that,
else in
right?
the city of Cookeville.
Okay, I will ask there not be any public comment right now while we're talking, if y'all would respect that,
But the
please.
city of Cookeville designates, the question is it the council who is going to designate whether this is going to be a city of Cookeville event, other than the conceived and performance events that are already accepted? But there's a city of Cookeville event. Does the council decide that, or does Mr. Mills decide that? That is an open-ended question.
And Eric, to your point, we have known about this 6 months, and the idea that no one has brought forth what you're saying tonight you wish you had in front of you, you're part and parcel of that too as well. And there's been no suggestion. You know we have been trying to solve an issue that our department heads and our legal team is counseling us, saying, hey guys, this is not tenable. We can't do this. There's liability, there's risk. They don't want the burden of picking who to and who not to allow. And you've known this has been being contemplated for months now. And if you wanted something in addition to the solution to the problem they presented us, you have had ample time to present that.
James, was I included on any of the work sessions for this? With you and the leadership of the city?
You're talking about with city staff and the
staff?
city attorney? Yeah, you were included with every council work session on this, but yeah, with city staff, you were not.
Okay.
No one on the council was, Eric.
Nobody was.
So it's reasonable to, without report, to not know that this is coming to us this week. And in fact, I think I'm probably the only council member who has sent everyone another draft of another city ordinance to try to say, hey, there's a better way to do this. There's other ways to do this. And so, to that point, I mean, there is other ways. And another question is, why is there this rush? What terrible thing has happened in the city of Cookeville in 2023 or any other time in the recent time that says, if we don't do this, this is going to destroy our city?
Well, I can address part of that, Eric, is that when we met with this 6 months ago and discussed all this, we discussed then, I informed the entire council then that we need to make a decision about this before next year because we have permit applications for next year. And it's not fair to go change it in the middle of the year. We want to change it at the end of this year, so we'll be ready for next year for people who file applications. What are we doing there in the park? And that's why, yes, that's right, in the park. And that's why it's coming up to you now. Now, I've already explained why we did the sponsor part, which is separate from that, but I did, and I said at the start, Eric, that I drafted this ordinance. You didn't have any input in what went in this. Nobody on the council did, other than the general direction that I need to come up with something to address the concerns about the park. And that's how all this initiated. And it wasn't, the barricades aren't to keep people out, it's to control where the alcohol could be consumed. Once we learned that we could no longer control where the alcohol could be could be contained in the park, that's the concern, that we would wander all over the park, all over the playgrounds, and it didn't happen this past year, but that was the concern that was expressed to me from the council. And that's why I've drafted that.
I have a question to that. And so what keeps a participant of a CPAC event at the park who's allowed to have alcohol from wandering into the rest of the park?
CPAC
so it's okay for
indoor event
services to do it. It's okay for this side to do it, but the issue is that somebody might wander away with alcohol. I'm not making that connection. Now, my understanding was this had a lot to do with more of a demarcation area. And my understanding is that the city put out signage to try to let people know this is where alcohol is allowed, this is where a boundary zone is, and this is to create a demarcation zone where there's an event taking place over here and the rest of the park is for the public. And if I'm wrong about that, please correct me.
Well, if that was the case, we wouldn't have needed to address this. You guys wouldn't have asked me to look at addressing it. If that was the case, all we could do is put up signs and that solved the issue, then, we wouldn't have spent months coming up with this. And that's not the way it was explained to me from the council, that the concern was we can't barricade, fence, rope where the alcohol goes. How do we do that? Now, there was another option we talked about, was actually building a wall and separating the pavilion from the park. But, Mr. Woods, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know that Leisure Services is not in favor of physically separating the pavilion and the bowl from the actual park. The belief is that the park should be available to everybody at all times. And the only way we can do that and Danny, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that, was to build a wall and physically separate the pavilion and the bowl from the park. Am I misspeaking there?
No, you're exactly right. So you can have the pavilion and the bowl be a separate facility, like CPAC is a separate facility. But if it is part of the park, then it has to be open to everyone. And you have to treat everyone the same. And that's part of the problem here, is that it's very difficult to do that.
Part of the issue has been that some of the people who have, some of the groups that have had events at the park want only their group to be in that area of the park, and we can't cordon off an area of the park just for any one group. And that was why the dispute arose about the barricades and things like that. And so, I mean, that is one of the issues that created some difficulties. But, so we can't, I mean, Eric, you said a minute ago, people couldn't leave this part of the park. Well, the park is open for everybody, no matter what.
With alcohol.
Yeah.
Without.
Well, yeah, with or without alcohol. I mean, if you have an alcohol-related event, we can have rules that say you should not cross this line. But people from other parts of the park can go in and, you know, people disobey rules like that. So, I mean, you really can't stand a policeman there and say, okay, you can't leave from this area and go to this area. You just can't. It's a fully accessible park.
But to my understanding, if you leave the designated area with alcohol, do you get in trouble if you have an open container outside the designated area?
Somebody there is monitoring.
Well,
there's no city staff.
But we don't staff
it. The police
So that's why
department.
the-
we're all-
Is it illegal?
Sure.
Okay.
But you need the public to know that they're violating the law. They've got to know where the perimeter is, so they know that if they go beyond that line, that they're breaking the law. That's what the barricades were used for. But you can't have barricades, because barricades keep people out, just like they're used to mark to keep people in. And so that's the problem that the city's been unable to manage. You've got to stop using barricades, and you've got to also convey to the public that they're crossing a line, and therefore they're breaking the law.
Okay, it was my understanding that we separated the barricades this past year, and there was signage on the barricades that indicated where the boundary lied. Is that correct? I didn't go to any events.
We tried to. But I can't say per se it is illegal to take an alcoholic beverage from one part of the park to the other. But there is an ordinance that specifically prohibits you to have alcoholic beverage in a city street or on a city sidewalk. But I don't think we can draft an ordinance that says this part of the park, it's illegal to have an alcoholic beverage. I don't think there's an ordinance that says that I know of.
I believe, Dan, that in that 2011, when the TCA was amended, it allowed it for the entire park.
Right.
What we've done historically, and again, this has been for 15 years or more, and again, Mr. Woods, I'm not going to put you on the spot here, but we've tried to limit it to one area of the park, so we didn't have alcohol consumption down by the playgrounds, at events where there are children. So I believe that's been by policy. Am I wrong on that?
That's a rule, not an ordinance.
Yes, that's right.
That's a rule, not an ordinance.
But the allowing of the alcohol in the park is subject to the rules and regulations of the city of Cookeville. The state law just allows it to happen. And that's the way it's been, is by policy, and then, or by, again, we tried to physically control where we didn't have, and I don't think anybody having an event wants to have it where children are on playgrounds. We're not saying that, but there's no way for us to control it without, we could hire police and have that and do that, then we're into spending quite a bit of money for these events, and we've not done that.
From a historical, this all started because members of the public wanted to be able to bring a bottle of wine or a couple of beers and listen to the bands or the symphony in the park and be allowed to do that. And the city could do that. And then it morphed into where bona fide charitable organizations have events there and do that. that and do that. But this young lady who spoke earlier talked about Fall Fun Fest. It was always prohibited to have any alcohol at Fall Fun Fest from the very inception. That's never been permitted. And it's not permitted now. So things has changed over time, and this kind of changes things back to the way it was originally, except the way it was originally, because it limits it to cookable, conceived, and produced events, and eliminates the 501c3 and bona fide charitable organizations from having alcohol-related events in the park, and limits it just to city events. But the city also, now and in the future, will have the right to have its own event anywhere in the city, whether it be Cane Creek Park or any other city property. The city can do that. The city council can say, we want to have this event at this location and allow alcohol under these circumstances. And the city can do that anytime, right now, anytime.
So this doesn't prohibit us either from coming back later on and creating a new ordinance that kind of encompasses the west side specifically to allow, like Blair mentioned earlier, what if these businesses, if these sidewalks are contiguous to their business, can they extend patio seating out there for overflow or special events and things like that? Is that an accurate statement?
No, yeah, the city can do that at any time. I think one thing you don't want to take into consideration is you don't want to restrict the flow of pedestrians going up and down the sidewalk, and make sure they leave enough room for pedestrians to go. But that can be done at West Side, and then some other area of the city may say, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it? And so, you have to create criteria to allow what areas you want to have those things, because I've been to cities where that's extremely popular kind of a thing.
And that can be done as a part of a larger comprehensive plan, but it doesn't necessitate that we ignore a problem that our staff and attorneys have brought to us. And the narrative about the downtown being thriving, I agree with that. And everyone I've talked to down there agrees that fortunately, this is not the underpinning of their economic survival down there. They're doing well and some have mentioned they've done well in spite of some of these events that this may curtail. So I don't agree with the narrative that this is just a necessity for them to be successful down there. And I don't agree with the hyperbole about prohibitionist and it's the end of the world. I think we have a fairly binary issue here in front of us that our staff and our attorneys that we pay have presented and said, guys, you have a problem. Let's deal with the problem right now. We don't keep bad policy just waiting on an improved policy to be refined later on. You deal with the issues that are brought to you as they are.
And businesses, we have any events? 2? 4?
This past year, there were 2 events at Dogwood Park, and we had no city-sponsored events anywhere else in the city.
But yeah, to Chad's point is that these businesses, they thrive down there. Those 2 events aren't.
They aren't related.
No, I don't see that relation at all. And the other thing, I know earlier I said, we cannot control what nonprofit, right? We have to say yes to all of them, any nonprofit. And I'm not saying I want to say, no, this nonprofit can't, but that opens that to anything. And we've had certain groups show up that nobody appreciates, and we can't, if they were a nonprofit, we can't control that.
I think it's dangerous
That's
to make laws based on what we worry about, what hasn't happened.
We got to be,
in
some things you got to be proactive.
They have experienced the burden of making these decisions, and they don't want that anymore. That has happened.
And we've talked about wine on the west side.
That isn't a hypothetical.
So
even Blair.
So back to where we're at now, James, did we research other cities in this process?
No.
Okay, so would it not be advisable for this council to see how all the other cities in Tennessee get this done?
They don't have this problem. We have a problem.
Because they've done it right, and we haven't researched that, and we haven't tried to study this, so we should take it to the table. We should look at this better. We should research it more. maybe the council should have a few work sessions on it and get a chance to speak to the public, work with the public, find out what kind of economic impact it might have, instead of sitting up here and speculating.
But we can't do that by just making this adjustment so we can move forward and.
Let me take your rights. I promise I'll give them back.
So I got a question on, I got a question. So if we pass this ordinance, all right, and it specifically says city streets are prohibited and this kind of thing, and then we go back and create some other, let's just say, hey, we want to do something, permit some use, consumption, and, with some parameters for the west side, for example, we want to do patio seating. Let's say at some time in the future, we want to kind of block off Broad Street there from Walnut to Cedar for pedestrian traffic, that kind of thing. Then, you're opening that up. Can you have another ordinance that actually overrides or supersedes, or would you have to make an adjustment?
You just amend the municipal code. Yeah, you just amend the municipal code.
Yeah, but you need to understand the way you started out, alcoholic beverages on the street, that's illegal now irrespective of this ordinance, okay? I mean, that's a violation of the municipal code, okay? So that would be, if you wanted to amend the municipal code to allow alcoholic beverages
on the west side,
on like a patio, well, on the sidewalk.
Right.
Most patios are on private property. On the sidewalk or on a close a street for a weekend to have something like that, under the parameters that the city council devises, that can easily be done. And that's probably, I have not looked at other cities, but I would say their ordinances have parameters for these businesses to do that. But we're just talking about Dogwood Park and who can serve alcoholic beverages in Dogwood Park is all this ordinance really addresses.
Well, I think too, we all agree that we want to go to a place of where private entity, where we can shut down those things. And this ain't gonna stop that. I mean, Blair's brought ideas before, and great ideas of doing certain things. And love to work with him on those things. We've talked about that. But that's not what this is entailing and doing. And we've all agreed that, I thought we all agreed we wanted to do this and then come down the road and look at some other things of doing stuff with private entities. I thought that's what we were kind of discussing.
Well, that's what I'd like to do. I mean, I do believe that this solves the immediate problem, I think, for our city staff. I mean, the administrative burden.
And remove the risk and liability. Then.
We can't staff it.
Risk and liability.
It's been articulated to us.
We can't staff it.
But also, I do think, too, that we need.
We can, but it's going to cost.
We do need, I think we need to somehow or another obligate ourselves publicly. To say, hey, you know what, let's set a date. Sometime, I don't know if it's January, February, March, or sometime, set a date, to where we can address some of these other issues. And because I think the community as a whole wants to get there. I think, have a vibrant downtown where, they can do some things, do some events, but I think that the issue at hand is right now is the park. Right now, we've got to.
Well, on the streets that they have to pick nonprofits for, we're leaving them hung out on a limb with this as it is.
So Dan, we could pass this ordinance, not the original that we've been looking at. We could look at going back to that and then set a date to bring people in to discuss a way to work together moving forward.
Yeah, you mean leave the ordinance the way it is now and not pass this ordinance?
Pass this ordinance.
Pass this ordinance. Well, first of all, pass this, if this ordinance is passed tonight.
Yeah, then can we set a date?
Then there's a second reading.
Right.
The next meeting. And then it doesn't take effect for 14 days after that. And this just addresses alcoholic beverages in the park. And I think James was concerned when he started working on this to let people know who've already applied for permits for the coming year that they can have their event, but they're not going to be able to have alcoholic beverages. And that's all this really does.
That's all it does.
Then this council could come back
and set a date,
study these other cities that Eric's talked about, and pass a new ordinance that lets businesses apply for a license to have have bistro tables on the sidewalk like you mentioned the other night, and other events at city-owned locations, whether it be Dogwood Park or any place else, under the parameters that the council decides.
As a question,
So that's what the council, those are the issues before the council, but that's not the issue before the council specifically tonight, but that is a broader issue. Right.
so my question is, if we were to do that and we were to create more ordinances, is it not likely that this ordinance will have to be changed?
Only if you anticipate your new ordinance is going to affect alcoholic beverages in the park. But
No, city streets and public streets.
well, city streets, it's already prohibited to have alcoholic beverages on city streets.
So
That exists right now.
So just let me understand, we will have to change this ordinance if we were to go back and do what we're talking about.
Or if we were to allow alcohol.
We'll have to change 11601.
That's right.
But in good conscience, that's not licensure to leave bad policy in
Why
place.
don't we just fix it?
Because they're saying it's bad right now.
The first part of this 601 is the existing law. It's the part that mentions Dogwood Park and the Performance Pavilion is the part that's amended, I believe, because it's already.
No, these are read as follows in our ordinance.
That's exactly the way it is now, except what's removed there are city-sponsored events at designated places designated by the city of Cookeville. And I don't think any on the staff are opposed to having these events. It's who do we decide is sponsor? Right. Who do we sponsor? Eric, do you want to tell me yes, who I sponsor and who don't, or any council person? If we could come up with criteria for determining who to sponsor or another way of doing that, I don't think anybody on the staff's opposed to that.
I think
but the way it is right now,
I think if the city of Cookeville financially sponsors a group,
Financially support.
that's correct. We have many nonprofits in our budget that we give money to. If we financially support a group, then why wouldn't we co-sponsor?
okay, well then let's put that as criteria down in the ordinance.
Well, let's table this thing and go back and write it correctly. This is the framework for allowing that. It exists now. We are removing that framework, and we cannot make that we cannot make that great idea happen if we remove the framework that great idea supports.
Far from it. They are telling us they are exposed, and we have been counseled that we are exposed to liability, having to pick the winners and losers right now.
How are other towns not exposed to liability?
That could be studied.
Then let's study it.
Yeah,
Let's table it.
Let's not leave bad policy in place in the interim.
Have we been sued over this alcohol policy
You want to
ever?
wait until we are?
Let Danny respond to that.
Did that involve alcohol or civil rights?
It involves civil rights.
Okay.
But all the issues are related.
But, and then when we've talked about penalties in the other ordinance, you have always been like, we don't need to do that because we'll get sued, right? We've talked about
Civil rights.
Sued is sued.
We do not need to invade civil rights. I agree with that 100%.
Part of the problem is that the civil rights issue is you can't have a city employee, a city staff member, a city manager, a parks director make these kinds of decisions as to who you can sponsor and who you can't without specific criteria. It's your proposal about who you donate money to is still the same thing. There are no criteria other than this is what the council thinks is worthwhile, and that's not a valid.
We use a committee to evaluate those groups.
Yeah, I don't want to put the burden on them either. And I think, the issue at hand is we do have an ordinance that is broken. But, some of us are not comfortable with how it is written. I do agree, though, that as city representatives, our job is also to do what's best for the city. And I agree, though, that I'm glad that this has opened up the floor for a lot of discussion, and I think for a lot of creative ideas for ways that we can continue to move Cookeville forward in ways that everyone can enjoy. By no means do I think any of us want to be restrictive, although unfortunately this got misconstrued as being restrictive. What I'm trying to do is be a good city representative to make sure that as a city, we are taking care of ourselves legally, but at the same time, be a good city representative and make sure I'm taking care of the citizens of Cookeville. And that's very hard to do when it comes to things like this, I feel like. I want to protect the city, but again, I don't want to prohibit what we can do. And so, I mean, I think I want to come back with a comprehensive, I want to come back with something that really allows Cookeville to do what they need to do, but at the same time, I don't want the city to be sponsoring events where we're having to pick and choose, because as a city, we can't, and we should not be picking and choosing who can have events. That's not our job. So how do we move forward? And that's what I don't have the answer for, and so.
Well, one thing I don't have the answer for is we have these legal issues of people drink in the park and groups drink in the park, but it's okay for CPAC and leisure services too. There's no legal issue there.
We're not picking and choosing.
Yeah, we can talk about that too.
We're not picking
I think the main thing about.
Or we're just encouraging the people who have current events to only go to those events to participate.
The main thing about CPAC is it's a confined
Someplace town center.
space that can be controlled. And you mentioned somebody leaving there with a beer or an alcoholic drink. And if they walked out on the sidewalk or the street and left CPAC, then that's no different than if they were at any other bar and walked out on the street or the sidewalk. They would be violating a city ordinance.
I'm talking about the events in the amphitheater outside. We're still allowing alcohol there.
If they walked out on the street or on the sidewalk, they would be violating a city ordinance.
Okay, so the issue at hand is we've had a motion and a second to table, to have further discussion, to study more, to.
Well, no, the motion is to table it.
Table
it. Yeah.
The discussion was, the reason to table it was to have further.
Yeah.
Study.
Yes.
I think, but the motion is to table the
Yeah.
ordinance tonight.
And so.
That's on the table right now.
On the table, the option table is on the table.
I just want to be clear. We're still going to have, no matter what we do, we're still going to have to restrict consumption of alcohol by groups in the park. I think that's still the issue at hand. So no matter what we do, we're going to have to do this. I think what we ought to do is pass this, but also make a commitment to do something else to, allow something on the west side, provide some kind of venue, some kind of atmosphere, some kind of space that these events can take place.
Yeah. I think we're all in agreement. We'll form a committee and have staff study it, and then
Blair be on the committee?
Blair be on the committee.
we can put some of the audience on it.
He's like, nope, he's out.
Blair?
You've been appointed, Blair.
Blair, where'd he go?
That's what happens when you leave, right?
Okay, so we've got the motion and the second to table. I feel like we've had a good discussion here. So we need to go ahead and vote on motion to table.
Before we vote, to add a little levity, how lucky are we to be able to meet like this and have this kind of discussion?
I love it.
I appreciate it, Eric.
Oh,
I do.
yeah,
I
and
appreciate all of you all. I really do.
Thank you for saying that, Chad. I love that.
Yeah. And, yep, okay, so we've got motion and a second to table. Any more discussion from the council? We'll go ahead and move this forward. Okay?
Yeah.
Then we'll move the vote for.
You're voting on the motion.
To table, yes,
right now.
yes, yeah, that is on the table. Okay. Everybody understand what we're voting on? We're voting on the motion to table this, correct? Okay, all right, so we'll go ahead and take a vote on that.
The vote yes means the motion
Means to table it.
Right.
I just need it in terms of colors.
Green tables, red does not table, and then we will go to vote on it tonight.
I was kidding.
No, well.
Green
yeah,
means
well,
stop.
100%, where's my thing?
Where'd you go?
You have mine.
Here we go.
Yeah.
All votes correct? 3 noes, motion fails.
Okay, so now back on the table of discussing, voting on this ordinance as is right now
First reading.
on first reading, which it does require a second reading. Is,
And there can be some amendments between first and second readings, but they can't be what would be characterized as material amendments.
Unless we make them now. If we make a request now, we can
make small-
make changes to this ordinance,
Well,
correct?
Yeah, you can make material changes now.
But not-
But when it comes back for second reading, there have been ordinances that never had a second reading.
because they got pulled, yeah. They really- yeah.
So anyway, so now the motion, the ordinance is all back on the table, is back for further discussion and vote.
Is there any more discussion on this?
Well, I think we got several weeks, we got our next council meeting canceled.
Yeah.
So we've got plenty of time here to make some changes to this ordinance for the second reading. What would they like? I would like to remove all the parts of the ordinance that indicates outside of the park area, the streets, the public property outside of the park, and at least limit this ordinance while we work on a better solution to just the park area as discussed, because that seems to be where the urgent nature of city business is.
I don't agree.
Well, now that would repeal existing city ordinances as well. You need to, and you need to be specific.
Well, yeah, it's a lot.
Repeal city ordinance.
I haven't made a
You want to
motion.
repeal the open
Discussion.
control law and things like that. I mean, you're talking about a significant change.
Well, ironically, and again, not just for the sport of disagreement, I think that's probably the part, to me, that I've heard from our staff, that they are most exposed on. They're having to pick who gets to do it and who's not. Now, I'm not saying there's not a path forward, but I don't think it's reasonable to leave them exposed anymore. And so,
In essence, this is our current ordinance with the exception of adding the park.
And streets and nonprofits being
I
taken.
thought the streets is already, streets is already.
Allowing nonprofits to operate in those zones that are city-sponsored.
Nonprofits can't operate in the street, only city sponsored.
Only city-sponsored.
And that's what the alcohol.
That's the difference.
To consume alcohol. Yes, let's be clear. We're talking about the alcohol.
Talking about city-sponsored is the difference here, not,
right. And that's an undue burden on our staff to pick who can do that and who can't. We've got to come up with a better way. And they're exposed to having to make that decision any time we don't vote on this.
But it's been going on for over 10 years.
You don't wait for a problem to get here before you deal with it, a problem that's already been exposed to us by our legal team.
And it is a civil rights problem. For instance, if you exclude alcohol from the park, a group that has been in the park in the past might come and make a permit application anytime to have such an event in the street. And unless they're a city-sponsored event, that's not allowed under the current law. And you can't have the city staff be placed in that decision process.
So that's interesting information. And I feel like right now, we operate where people can express themselves and in their groups and enjoy those, partake in those events that we allow as a city, similar events.
They can still do it, they just can't sell alcohol.
They just got to come to our events. This is what we're saying.
They can't host their own right now because we don't want to select who can and cannot.
Why are we trying to get in the business of selection?
Because the ordinance says we are.
No, this ordinance pushes them into that area.
No, the ordinance says right now we are in the business of picking.
With city-sponsored events.
Closing alcohol in the park doesn't give people a place to go, so they have to go somewhere else.
So this doesn't prohibit them from doing any kind of event. This prohibits
The sale of alcohol.
Correct.
It addresses the.
Yeah, we can have, I think that's clear, that we can have events in the city still.
Right now, only 501c3s and other bona fide charitable organizations can apply for a special use permit to have an event in the park that serves alcohol. Not any restaurant, not any commercial enterprise, only 501c3 and otherwise bona fide charitable organizations are permitted to do that, aside from the city of Cookeville itself, under existing ordinance.
Call for a vote.
Yeah, I think I agree. We've had a lot of discussion, good discussion. I know for me personally, this discussion does not end here. I don't think for any of us it ends here. I think all of us have agreed that we have found a bigger issue that we want to fix so that Cookeville can continue to be a really great place to live and have events and support our businesses and our citizens at the same time. So I think that if everyone, y'all know that we are going to continue this discussion. We want discussion from y'all. So that is why we want to, talk about having a work session, town hall, something like that, where we can have input from the citizens so we can get this right.
I think this is an opportunity, sorry to interrupt.
No, you
I
can.
think this is a tremendous opportunity to do it right and make it what everyone wants. I think it's a great opportunity, especially for our downtown, because that's kind of a vision that everybody has.
Well, like Blair said earlier, he wants to be a part of these things, and we hope, Blair, that you would be a part of this next thing coming in when we have these meetings, so.
I think there's a good chance that Blues and Brews and Wine on the West Side are canceled in 2024.
You're invited. We're inviting you right now. Anybody else that wants to be.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead, yeah. I think we've had discussion. We'll go ahead and call for a vote.
All votes correct? 3 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. So we still have the rest of the meeting to go. I apologize, I just realized that was not the last item, that was B. So yes, on to 7C now. Consider Resolution R23-1221, making appropriations from the opioid settlement funds to the Cookeville Regional Medical Center for the prevention and treatment of opioid addiction, benefiting the city of Cookeville, Tennessee for the fiscal year 2023-2024. Mr. Mills.
Mayor and council members, to date, the city has received just over $190,000 in opioid settlement funds. The settlement agreement requires that these funds be distributed to organizations involved in the prevention and treatment of opioid addiction. The resolution before the council would appropriate all of the funds received to date and all future settlement funds to the Cookeville Regional Medical Center for their Addiction Navigator service. According to the information provided by CRMC, the Addiction Navigator service is intended to coordinate and facilitate addiction services at CRMC and to assist with the determination of treatment options for patients that are suffering from opioid addiction. An MOU is to be executed between the city and CRMC, certifying the manner in which the funds will be spent, and CRMC is required to file an annual report to the city manager as to how the funds are spent. I would recommend for your approval of the resolution, and we'll be glad to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Walker, seconded by Councilman Gilbert. Any discussion from the public on this agenda item? Discussion from council?
Yeah, I think it's a really good thing. A lot of people may not know. There was I'll try to understand this best if I can. There's an opioid lawsuit. Many municipalities, counties, and cities were attached to that lawsuit. We are getting those funds as a city, which kind of places the responsibility on the council to make sure that those settlement funds for people who have been addicted to opioids kind of try to make it back into the treatment process or try to make it put back into a treatment process. And I think that the effort by this council to make sure those things go to CRMC, which is the front lines of a lot of these issues, is a very good thing for our city. And I appreciate the mayor's work on helping make that happen and the rest of the council.
Well, yeah, Jeff says the rest of the council for sure. And I do want to address that this also doesn't just help with the opioid addiction crisis, which obviously is happening and is very real, but with our ER in general. A lot of the reasons that your ER is backed up and you can't get through is because you've got people coming in with overdoses and acute addiction issues going on right then. And so by utilizing this addiction navigator, we can hopefully expedite their entry into treatment, recovery, mental health facility, whatever it is they need, and then open up those beds. So for me, the return on investment for this is tenfold and measurable. We've talked about that as well. We will be able to measure and see how fast are patients getting into a recovery center or a mental health facility with this navigator versus what it was happening before. So I think it's a really great use of funds, and And I know that the hospital is very, very appreciative and excited about this opportunity.
Yeah, with having a decade of experience in this arena, this is exciting, because previous work, that's all I dealt with was people getting there and nowhere to go. So having somebody there that can focus on this will be huge for our community, and then get the wraparound services they need. So that'll be fantastic. I appreciate that.
Any more comment? Okay, go ahead and vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. 7D, consider authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement and purchase property on Lee Avenue identified as a portion of map 040G, Group C, parcel 001.07 from Sword Rental Partnership in relation to the Tennessee Tech Pump Station Replacement Project and construction on the Tennessee Tech Equalization Basin. Can y'all make these any shorter for me to read? Mr. Turner.
Our department has determined that we need to replace our Tech wastewater pump station, as well as construct a wet weather overflow facility there. It'd be a 1.5 million gallon tank. This shows the location that we've chosen in looking at the surrounding area. It's adjacent to our existing pump station. We will need to purchase 3 properties, which is shown. You get to that one. Yeah, these 3 properties here in order to construct this tank. We have negotiated with the Sword Properties. This is a set of apartments that's on their property. We have an agreement here to purchase that property, and I'm seeking your permission for the city manager to execute this agreement and to purchase this property. Purchase price is $550,000, and we'd be tearing down this building to construct, build the project.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Walker. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Any discussion from the public on this? Discussion from council? Okay, go ahead and vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. We've removed 7E, so we are on to 7F now. Consider approval of engineering contract amendment number 2 for DeBerry Heights Pump Station Replacement Project. Mr. Turner.
This shows our new pump station that's just completed at DeBerry Heights there. The project is run over a little bit on construction time, so we're needing to do an amendment for the engineering and inspection portion of this project. The original contract amount was, engineering contract amount was $182,767. This contract amendment would add $18,824.75 for a total contract price of $211,583.75. This $18,000 add will be in the next item where we'll collect that money from the contractor. So I recommend your approval on this engineering contract amendment.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Bocci. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Any discussion from the public? Discussion from council? Okay, vote.
Oh, gosh. I gotta hit that button.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Keeping track. Thank you. 7G, consider approval of change order number 2, final balance for the DeBerry Heights Pump Station Replacement Project. Mr. Turner.
This is the same project that was discussed in there a while ago. The contractor has reached substantial completion on December the 7th, and this does have the $18,824.75 there in the contract change order. This total change order is for $77,224.25, a deduct of that amount, which brings the original contract price of $277,000 to $1,193,575.75. I recommend approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Vice Mayor Eldridge. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Bocci. Any discussion from the public? Discussion from council. Okay, we'll vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you. And 7H, consider approval of change order number 2, final balance for 2022 Joff Drive and Victory View Waterline Project. Mr. Turner.
This project was for a water line on Joff Drive and then Victory View Drive. Contractors ran over on time out there. We've actually cut out some of the units that was not needed. So this is a total deduct of $73,037.50 for a final contract price of $223,165. And I recommend approval.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Bachi. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Gilbert. Any discussion from the public? Discussion from council. Okay, we'll vote.
All votes correct. 5 yes, motion carries.
Thank you.
That concludes the agenda portion of this meeting. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the council on non-agenda items? Okay, seeing none, we do have 9A, an announcement, the appointment of the Cookeville Energy Department Director. Mr. Mills.
Yes, Mayor and council members, of course, our ordinance was approved tonight on second reading, creating the Energy Department, and I'm very happy and pleased to announce the appointment of Carl Haney as the first director of the Cookeville Energy Department.
Everybody knows
Shut
who
up,
you are. No,
Carl.
yeah.
Shut up, Carl. Speak.
Did you knight him?
We knighted him. He's the czar. We're fortunate to have somebody with Carl's abilities and caliber, and I really appreciate him taking the position, and he's going to take us to great heights with our new energy department.
I will echo that. I don't think there's anyone better who could do this. And thank you, because this is going to be a lot of extra work for you. But you've got a council that is supporting it 100%. We know you're the right guy. You're going to be amazing. So thank you for doing this. Thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely appreciate everything you do, man.
Anybody else? All right, meeting is.
One other thing. We will not meet again until January 18th, so no meeting, first meeting in January, okay?
Okay. Are you done?
Merry Christmas.
Any comments from the council?
Yes, I would just like to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas and enjoy your holidays. And we'll look forward to a new year in 2024. So we'll see you guys again in January.
See you next year.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, everyone. Meeting is adjourned.